Thank you for choosing the Minority Alliance organization today. Today, we'll be discussing a few icons that have meant something to each one of us that we could pick out of history. With it being Black History Month, the first week of Black History Month, we kind of wanted to again revisit a couple of these people that we have spoke on in the past and how they have actually added to the movement that we've been able to see from years of work that they initiated. We are now seeing progress in the fight that we have long been battling. Um, Personally, to me, I wanted to start with Malcolm X, and the reason why he sticks out to me is the passion that he was able to bring to the movement. And at a time, we spoke on Martin Luther King, I believe, about 2 weeks ago now. Uh, and you kind of needed a MLK and you needed a Malcolm X. You needed both of them to balance out the movement in that time period because you had a ton of people on each side who felt they were being done wrong, and you had people who felt going about it in peaceful action was how they could get their word out, and you had people who felt like they had to make a little noise to be heard. And it's hard for me to say, without Malcolm X and his leadership in the movement, that we would honestly have seen the progression that we've seen at a time when dogs were being sicked on Black individuals, when water hoses were being used on peaceful protesters and things of that nature. You kind of had to have somebody with the passion of Malcolm X come and lead a different side of the movement and a different ideology to honestly help push us and vault us into uh, where we honestly get to enjoy certain things that they gained for us going through that civil rights era. Um, with Malcolm X, another thing that I wanted to point out was I know it's a new movie on Amazon, One Night in Miami. The movie it shows a great angle of that passion that was needed to honestly get us to this point. So that's one of my recommendations this week. If everybody get a second throughout the group, people on our YouTube page and audience page, if you have a second to actually check this movie out and take a second and look into Black history from that angle this month, that would be great. Um, Shooting over to you, Mark. I know you had pulled out a few individuals and icons that had mattered to you from the civil rights era and the civil rights movement, and just wanted you to speak on one of them there.
Right. One of the ones that I pulled out and I actually posted on the page earlier, it came to my mind when I was looking late last week at the passing of Hank Aaron. And, I decided to, definitely take a closer look because, obviously as a sports fan, I mean, I know who Hank Aaron was and, I know what he did and I know some of the iconic imagery from his career. But when you look at his situation, the way he came into the sport, I mean, it was only a few years. I believe he was 11 years old or maybe a young teenager when Jackie Robinson broke into the major leagues. So he came not very far after. So, it was still kind of a raw wound of having actual African Americans playing alongside white players in this traditionally, historically white sport. And he approached it the way that a lot from that era approached it, which is with this overwhelming dignity and upstanding, upright nature. He never let all that hatred get him down. He never let the issues that he had and the problems that he had from baseball, from teammates, and especially from fans really hinder him and get him down. And he excelled in his career. And as it reached a new zenith of that type of hate and racism as he began to chase down maybe the most hallowed statistic in sports at the time, which would be Babe Ruth's home run record. And that was again the great record of the great American sport. And to have an African American actually sit atop that mountain was something that was completely unacceptable to a lot of people, a lot of people. And so, the type of death threats that he saw, the negative press that he saw, the way people acted and reacted to him, and this was coinciding with kind of the back end of the civil rights movement. Things got really, really big. And then as, we saw the passing of Malcolm, we saw the passing of Martin. And then as we, came out of those decades, the end of the Vietnam War, and then we're heading towards the 80s, and then Hank Aaron to, finally begin to eclipse that record, and again, he eclipsed that record, approaching it with the same level of honor, integrity, and dignity that he walked into his career with. He was one of the rare people who got to go out the way he went in. And it was a tremendous thing. He became an ambassador for the sport after that, and he was just an inspiration for so many others who could look up and realize that you could get through. You could rely on your strengths and your talents, and that you could be looked at as one of the greatest of your sport without having to be looked at as the greatest Black version of your sport, or or have some other connotation put on there. And being able to climb that mountain in a time where they did not want him in that sport, and be able to kind of not only climb that mountain but chisel his name into that stone where it can never be removed. That's a really inspirational thing. So I wanted to make sure that was definitely someone that I got a chance to focus on this month.
Yes, sir. The next person who I wanted to put a spotlight on was Marcus Garvey. And before, I know I had posted maybe last year around, I want to say around Thanksgiving time, a little prior to, I had posted a video from Marcus Garvey on YouTube. And I really pushed for a lot more millennials to do more research on Marcus Garvey, because I know personally he's not one that we speak of in our history books in school, and he's not one that's normally named out in the open for adding a lot of power behind civil rights movement in America. Marcus Garvey was actually Jamaican American and started a movement in Harlem where he was trying to actually get African Americans who were former slaves who had now been freed to go back to Africa and actually create their own country for themselves. Um, and Marcus Garvey, his push behind doing this was, he said we would never have something of our own until we go and build it ourselves. And that right is the same ideology, as I say all the time, behind the Minority Alliance organization. Is yes, there are certain policies that need to be changed, and there are certain things at the governmental level that need to be changed on our behalf. But it also is going to take us making the initiative steps on our end to actually see equality and true equality across the board. Um, Marcus Garvey, as I said, to me personally, he's one of the biggest icons, I would say, for me, as far as he's the reason why you see establishments such as the NAACP and things of that nature. Um, and who's to say, without his additions that he brought into the movement, that we would have had all the great organizations that were able to push for equality over the years.
To jump in with my second one, I wanted to, highlight, a couple of people, and I'll start with one first that kind of gone not I don't want to say unnoticed in the rise of what we've been doing, as a people for the last few decades, but I really want to highlight some of the ones who've reached some really high peaks. And one of those ones that I wanted to highlight is Shirley Chisholm. I bring up Shirley Chisholm. I look into her background, and she was truly the antithesis of a person that just rises above everything that was kind of thrown at them in life. And she was a wonderful example of how far you can achieve by plowing ahead and putting your head down and being able to go after what you're looking for and being able to break down barriers. She truly was a barrier destroyer. She was born, and she lived and grew up in a really low income neighborhood in New York City, and she just never let any of those things get her down. I mean, she had really really good grades. She was able to get into a prestigious girls only high school in Brooklyn, and then she went on from there, and she went to Brooklyn College, where she received awards for her skills as a debater. She joined a sorority there, and it was called the Harriet Tubman, and she also joined the Harriet Tubman Society. And while she was a student, she advocated for African American history in the curriculum, and she advocated for women to be on the student government as leaders. And these were barriers that had not before been broken in that area. So she was able to shatter those ceilings. She earned a master's in elementary education. She wanted to be a teacher. So it wasn't just about her gaining knowledge, it's about passing that knowledge on and making sure by including African American studies and including females into these things that we were able to break down a lot of those barriers. Because again, for Black women, it's it's double hard. It was double hard for them because I've always said before this country was racist, it was misogynist. And so you have to break both of those ceilings. And she did a really good job at attacking both of those. She campaigned in the 50s, in the early 50s, 1953 to be exact, for Louis Flagg Jr. to become Brooklyn's first Black judge. She went on from there to serve in the New York State Assembly before she moved on to Congress and became the first Black woman elected to Congress. And then in 1972, she actually ran on the Democratic ticket for president. Now, she was not the first woman to ever run for president. That was actually Margaret Chase Smith, but she was actually the first Black person to ever run for president. Now, obviously, 1972, Richard Nixon won that election, but to be able to even make it to that height, to run for president, to actually break down all those barriers. Again, you're talking about a young Black girl, growing up in the late 30s and 40s in a poor neighborhood in New York and going to school in Brooklyn, being able to shatter all those different stigma and go to college and actually affect change in college and debate on topics that were important at the time that we still debate today, and to be able to shatter all those barriers and run for office and get into Congress and affect change in Congress and then actually run for president. And the audacity to be able to do that, the strength, the inner strength, and the audacity to be able to stand up to that system in 1972 and look it dead in the eye, and to actually look forward and try to achieve those things. I mean, we saw a ceiling shatter with with Kamala Harris becoming the vice president of the United States, but really, when you look back, it was Shirley Chisholm who put the first real crack in that ceiling. So I wanted to make sure that we were able to highlight her this month.
Yes, sir. My final one, and this is somebody who, um, I mean, it's still current history, their history period, and I believe he's one of the biggest, loudest voices in the civil rights movement and leaders who actually blazed the path for us to get to this exact moment where we're at right now in time. John Lewis, who passed away last year, um, he means way more to this movement, I believe, and is current than any other civil rights activist um, of this time currently. Without John Lewis, I don't think you see a Biden presidency. I don't think you see true progression uh, starting to occur at the level where we're seeing it play out now. Um, I don't think you see people becoming woke in the sense of getting out and actually um, using their voting rights. And that was one of the biggest things that John Lewis was always fighting for, is for everyone to use their right to vote, uh, to be able to create a more equal playing field for us in that aspect. John Lewis, of course, with the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, um, he was hand in hand with MLK at that walk. And even after MLK's death, John Lewis, who was very good friends with Martin Luther King, decided to continue to take up the baton after that period and continue to fight for these things across the board. John Lewis was one of the first Black members of Congress to be able to stand firm on his positions and be able to actually see bipartisanship work from people on the other side of the aisle. He was able to reach out to people no matter whether they were Democrat, Republican. It didn't matter what you look like. All John Lewis wanted to do was work so that we can all have a better chance here in America. Um, One person who John Lewis played a huge part in getting him elected into the Senate this year was John Ossoff. And I don't believe you see Georgia uh, go for Biden this year. I don't think you see um, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff have a true chance at a Senate position without John Lewis leading the way and all the sacrifices that he made along the way.
Absolutely. Obviously, the sacrifices that John Lewis had were visible. I mean, he still carried scars from, what he got on what they call Bloody Sunday, and was able to, he carried those with him, and they were proud scars because they were the foundation of, everything that we see today. So, it was always a great, works of his. And though I wish he could have gotten a chance to see where things have gone to today, again, his legacy continues, and, we have to continue to push those things. The last one I had, I want to stick with the civil rights movement, and I wanted to actually speak of a bit of a dark horse in the civil rights movement, a person who isn't spoken of as much as some of the great stars that we know of in the civil rights movement. I mean, obviously, we know about Medgar Evers and Malcolm and Martin and John Lewis and so many others. But James Baldwin, I wanted to point out, to me, James Baldwin is one of the most gifted speakers we've ever had. James Baldwin was, he was able to really articulate the Black experience. And he's one of the first people to ever publicly on television articulate the Black experience to white America by being in situations and shows. And, one of the discord of the civil rights movement and of the Vietnam War made it an environment where you got to see debates on television. It was one of the first times where, people sat down at a university and people got a chance to actually truly debate the topics of our time. And James Baldwin was one of the first people to ever go on there on those shows and be able to articulate what it was like to grow up, Black in America, where you realize that the imagery of everything that you saw, all media, not just, movies, but all movies, all TV shows, all commercials, the athletes on television, the vision of America was that of a white America. It was a white suburban, white picket fence, dinner on the table at 7 p.m. white America, and that wasn't the experience of a Black person, and that you grew up feeling different and feeling inferior and feeling as if you were inherently wrong or inherently not a part of the club just for being born different and not looking like the image that was out there. and he was able to articulate that, and they were able to take it to some great heights, and their group was able to, take an audience with Robert Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, to try and bring some of these issues to them and to be able to, speak to all of the issues that we were going through at the time, and to be able to bring that voice to it. Because a lot of people would think that, it was monolithic, everybody was fighting for civil rights and everybody was fighting for these things. Like, no, there were different methods to this battle that everyone was going through. He chose to express himself through intellectual debate. Malcolm's goal was to secure our rights through any means necessary. Martin's was, passive resistance of nonviolence. And all of those things, were equally passionate, but completely different in ideology. And it made sometimes fast friends and sometimes bitter rivals of some of these people who were all fighting for the same thing. And he was able to go on, and he wrote, I believe he wrote one book, and he had another book that was not published before he passed away. He has a very integral part in the Netflix documentary. It's on Netflix right now, called "I Am Not Your Negro." I would definitely recommend anyone and everyone to watch that, because again, it drives home everything that he was about, and everything that, from his point of view of it. He spoke on what it was like to witness the first Black children going to an all-white school during the integration, and what that was like, and how it felt to see National Guard having to walk these kids into school, and the dignity on their faces as, people in that town and other students spit on them and threw things at them and called them names and screamed at them, and they sat there and they never dipped their head, they never dropped their head, they always kept their heads held high. And to be able to take that voice and bring it to us, because we were so desperate in those times to have something to cling to as a vision of the dignity and the power that it takes to stand up to the system. So I would definitely recommend that anybody who has not looked up on some of his work to please do so, because it is very important to recognize that these are the things that we came from, and the anger and the anguish that we felt going through last year, and dealing with the death of George Floyd and so many other incidents that continue to stoke the rage of being treated differently. And we still see it to this day, and to know, and it helps connect us, it helps connect that fiber and lets us know that, this isn't a new problem. We know that it's been a long time problem, but we have to understand there have been people who've been in this fight for so long, and that is why this isn't, again, a flash in the pan issue. This isn't an issue where we get to, we go through what we go through, we do what we do a few marches, and then we can kind of sit back and rest on it a little while, and we can become bored or tired with with the struggle on it, because we have different things to get to in our own lives. It just shows that, we're talking about 70 years worth of history just in the profiles that we've gone over today. And we're still going through it. We're still doing it. We're still fighting that fight. We have a little bit more of a foothold up that hill, but we're still going up the hill. So, I wanted to make sure that, his achievements and accomplishments did not get overlooked, along with the other ones that we spoke on today. So, as I kick it back over to you, Cohen, what this all means to me is that it shows us that, the fight's not finished. It's incredibly inspiring to know that, to see and actually be able to dig into people who accomplished so much, sacrificed so much, achieved so many things. And it also gives us a little bit more of an understanding that we definitely can get to the top of this hill and see our full potential of reaching the level of respect and equality that we are looking for. So, again, as I kick it over to you, you kind of lay some words out there on what this whole thing means to you and to this movement moving forward.
And to me personally, I feel like, especially a lot of these icons that we brought up today, to the movement, I believe when people look back and uh, research their lives and the different things that they've done, it should only light a bigger fire behind what we've already got started now. And we should only be looking to finish strong at this point, because imagine they started this for us lifetimes ago. And this is something that we're still dealing with here in America, something that you would think it should be totally over at this point. There should be no such thing as racism and such a mixed country of different people from all over the place. Um, I just think personally, especially going through Black History Month this month, I know we will continue to post quotes, and we'll continue to post events from this week in history, to be able to give our group members. And if that's helps you learn something new, that maybe you didn't know about one of the civil rights leaders before, that's our only goal. And continuing to educate each of ourselves on people who got us to this point so that we can continue the battle stronger. Um, Further than that, looking at Biden's executive plans and his current coronavirus relief package that he has proposed, and how that may be something, how certain things within this package would affect a minority community. Now, Mark, I don't know if you've been able to check up too much on the package or break it down yourself quite yet, but do you think, I know there's certain things within this package like the $15 minimum wage, uh, I believe uh, what is it, the checks to individuals within there. How are these certain things able to help within the minority community on rebounding from the coronavirus?
Well, one of the big things on there that is less publicized is the redistributing how the vaccines are going out. One of the things that they've seen is that richer neighborhoods and white neighborhoods are actually seeing more than half of the vaccine usage overall, and that less than um, we're seeing 50% less in the minority communities that we are seeing in those other communities. We're seeing that on a city by city level, we're seeing on a state by state level, and we're actually seeing it on a country by country level. Believe it or not, one of the countries, I think maybe the country that has the most of the coronavirus vaccine right now is Canada, and they have only about 50 million citizens, and they have enough vaccine right now to vaccinate their entire population 4 times over. So this has been a thing where countries who have been able to pay and communities who have been able to pay have been able to get that preferential treatment. So them actually taking a closer look at that and redistributing that really does hold up to the key promise, one of the key promises that they put out, that politics as usual when it came to how the minority community was going to be treated, is not going to be that kind of ball game anymore. So I do like that. $15 an hour minimum wage. I mean, I was looking it up. We've been on a 7.25 minimum wage nationwide since 1997. I'm sorry, since 2009. I'm sorry. So we've been there for almost 12 years. And so, and the average price of everything, with the exception of maybe a gallon of gas, has skyrocketed since those times. So, obviously, would I have preferred to see something like that in its own separate bill? Yeah, sure. But if this is a bill meant to help people, we've got to look at how things are done when it comes to our finances and how we are able to take care of our citizens, as opposed to debating why we shouldn't. We need to have a lot more debate on how we do something, as opposed to or why should we do it, or do we need to do it, or something like that. It's obvious when we look at the wealth gap, and we look at the the impact that all of these things have had in the minority community. I mean, you look in the minority community, we are in jobs that force us into communal situations. So you see, a higher rate of COVID infection. You see far more people without insurance in the minority community. So you see a higher rate of COVID deaths and a higher rate of severe illness in the minority community. And that puts a strain on everyone, including on hospitals, because you have uninsured patients who are coming in their emergency situations, and whether they keep them there for an extended amount of time or whether they are able to just treat them for resources and not be paid on it, it puts a strain from the bottom of the ladder all the way to the top of the ladder. So addressing these problems and not waiting around and debating things endlessly and having people quibble over ridiculous items like should we look at everyone's tax returns from 2019 when 2019 is a year that the pandemic didn't exist, so looking at their finances from then means nothing to their finances now, and not wasting too much time debating on some of those things. We can debate the how after the do. So, I'm glad that there's a little bit more do than debate on this. So I do like that part. I do think that it is important for our government to learn to work together, because we can't have a government of running each other over, followed by revenge after the next election. We can't have that kind of cycle. But we have to recognize that A, people need help, and we have to recognize that B, these are not new tactics. There was a large tax cut they went through in 2017 that was done in the exact same way that this is being done. So again, can we stop debating over process and start debating over how we actually help people? And for the minority community, any help is a good thing, because the minority community is very used to getting no help. So overall, I would say that this will help, and we'll be able to help people out, and we'll be able to find the how after we do. So that's my thought on it.
Yes, sir. And personally, as I said, a couple weeks ago, we kind of took a look at how far we had got with the current Biden administration, and we spoke on a couple things that through his executive actions and orders that he was doing at the time, that was great, and we were actually seeing change, occur in the time period that we kind of discussed before Biden even took office. These were the things that we were actually looking for. So, on a sense of grading the current administration and how much work they've been able to execute within a month period, uh, I can't complain at all. And especially being a minority, this is the type of progress that we wanted to see, and at the rate that it's occurring. We can't be anything but grateful and hope to see a ton more along the way for us. Um, with Biden's coronavirus relief package, I don't think that I don't know the big issue right now between Democrats and Republicans is the current price point of the relief package. But my true belief is there is no price on what we need currently. We need whatever it takes to get everybody back to at least where they were prior pandemic, so that we can actually rebuild from this pandemic and what it has caused to the economy. Um, Again, as I said, we will be continuing to, as per um, Black History Month, we'll continue to post up quotes, and we'll continue to do current events that happened that week in history, so that people can continue to learn more about these different civil rights icons, and, as I said, what they mean to this movement as a whole, and how they actually got us to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that as we go through these next this next week, and as we go through Black History Month again, this is a time for reflection. It's not just necessarily a time for celebration. It's not just a time to look up old deeds and old accomplishments. It's a time to actually draw those parallels between what was going on before, what's going on now, and what we're looking to have going on in the future. You know, again, like I said, they laid down a foundation and they did things that we frankly don't have to do today, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I want to make sure that, you know, we put out there that although we are celebrating these figures, we're talking about these figures and hopefully we're educating, because now a lot of this stuff wasn't taught in school. I've said this before, they teach us a lot of folk tales in school. They don't teach us a lot of history. So whenever we're able to put some of these things out, I'm really happy that we have that opportunity, because again, there's some people I guarantee out there who may, you know, hear one of these videos and, you know, they learned something about Marcus Garvey today, or they learned something about Shirley Chisholm today, or James Baldwin today, or any of these other figures that we talk about. And I'm hoping that we're able to do that. And I hope people are able to draw a parallel in what they hear and what they read about these people, and draw this parallel into their own lives and what they see going on today, and see that struggle still pushes forward, and are able to, you know, then move forward and do things for their own futures. So, you know, we'll continue to monitor all of our situations, everything going on currently. Again, we'll continue to hold everybody to account and tell the truth. I mean, you know, again, we've seen some good things from the minority community so far in the administration. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. It can't be perfect. Governance is not perfect, but we want to be able to call things out for what they are. When we see something that we do not like, we will tell the truth on that. When we see things we do like, we will tell the truth on that. And, you know, because that's all we, you know, owe to all of our people, is to be able to tell you the truth without an agenda, without a bias, and without, you know, kind of undue pandering. We just want to put it out there. So, you know, as we go into this next week, you know, everybody take care of yourselves, you know, keep an eye on things, you know, celebrate this Black History Month, and we will talk to you all next week.